Welcome to Student of the Game podcast, where we help you master the fundamentals, fall in love with practice, and win at the game of life. I'm your host, Brad Noll. Welcome to the classroom.
What's going on? Welcome to another episode, solo episode. And we're following my guy, David Sidoni. He has a How to Buy a Home podcast. And he was a realtor and he pivoted to being a podcaster. And I just found this interesting because, when it comes to the definition of student of the game, it's all about paying attention to clues, paying attention to people before you so that you can add to the things that you're doing in life. There's a lot of things in my business that I do because I've seen attorneys and I've seen doctors and I've seen financial advisors and things that they've input into their businesses, and I've put them into mine. And there's nothing wrong with that. But today I want to talk to you about shifting the generational curve. This is a fascinating topic for me. So the very first thing is what I want you to hear. I want you to hear me say this. Number one, I had a great childhood. My mom and dad, they gave me everything. Everything that they've taught me and who I am today is because of him and her, and the lessons that they both instilled upon me. And they both had gifts and they both had abilities. And I learned something from both of them. I learned something from my sister, Brother Greg. I'm a student of the game. That's why we're here in this podcast. I'm a student of the game. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, I think our parents want us to have a better life than they did. And I think if you're honest with yourself, you want your kids to have a better life than you. And better is subjective. Better is, what does that mean to you? So we're talking about shifting the generational curve. I heard a podcast recently, and it's really got me to think a little bit more, not just feel, but think. And I'll come back to this thought in a minute. But there's a podcast I was listening to. It was an investment podcast, and the guy was talking about his 12-year-old son started watching him invest in real estate, and his 12-year-old son this summer wanted to invest in real estate himself. And this is where this whole podcast comes from, shifting the generational curve. And the son says, "Dad, I want to invest in real estate like you." And the dad says, "Okay, great. Well, let's get into some single-family investment. Let's buy a house and rent it out." And the son at 12 years old said, "Well, why would I do that, Dad? You don't do that anymore." And the dad had to stop and think, like, "You're right, I don't do that anymore. And it's because I'm advanced." So would you like to lift the curve and just have your kids go through the same experiences as you did? Or do you want to have your kids shift the curve and maybe kick the ball down the field a little further? So the dad says, "You know what? You're right. I invest in multifamily. I don't invest in single family anymore. Maybe you should think about investing in multifamily right off the bat." And now we are shifting the generational curve, and his kids are going to have a better life than him, and his grandkids are going to have a better life than his kids. He's shifting the curve. I've been wrestling with this all week, and I thought to myself, my parents gave me everything that they had, and that's part of who I am today, and I'm grateful for it. But there's things that they didn't teach me, and it's because they did the best they could with what they had. How many times, if you're a parent right now, how many times do you think to yourself, I am doing the best I can with what I have? All of us are. You are, the listener. You're walking right now. You're walking your dog. That's kind of how I get my podcast. You're walking the dog and you're thinking, I'm doing the best I can right now with what I have. And that's true. And with my kids, I'm sorry, kids, if you're listening to this, I'm doing the best that I can. Your mom and I, we're doing the best that we can with what we have. That's just how it works. So don't feel bad when you can't give your kids a lesson. You don't know how to do it. That's okay. I learned a lot from my parents. But the reason I'm making this a big deal is because I want to talk about this social media post that I just had that kind of got some traction, and it really got me thinking. So my 17-year-old daughter, I've got 3 kids, 17, 14 at the time of this recording, 17, 14, and 12. And our 17-year-old got rear-ended and needed a new car. So insurance gave us some money, and she wanted a new car. I was wrestling with what to get for her. I don't like buying new cars. If I'm being honest, I don't like buying new cars. I don't like spending a lot of money and not getting what I want. I don't like spending a lot of time researching. I don't have an abundance of time to research cars. I don't know much about them. So I didn't get that from my parents, and I'm not passing that down to my kids. So I started thinking a little bit. How do I feel about my daughter getting a new car? Should I get her a beater because she's 17 years old and she's still a high school kid who's going to be a college kid and she just needs something to get to the golf course? Should I get her a beater? Something as cheap as possible? Should I make her pay for it? Should I pay for it? There's a lesson here. And the thing I struggled with was, how do I give her the same lessons that I got when I was growing up? Save for a rainy day, pinch pennies, live on less than what you make. How do I give my kids the same lessons? How do you give your kids the same lessons? How do you give your niece and nephew the same lessons? How do you give your team members the same lessons? I struggle with that in real estate. If you're a business owner and you're listening, maybe you are not being the leader that you could be because you're trying to teach your team through the same lessons that you learned the business. Think about that. I learned the business 21 years ago. 20 years ago. Am I giving my team lessons from 20 years ago? Now, fundamentals, that's different. Strategies and tactics, those change. Fundamentals are always going to stay the same. Here's what happened. My daughter got in a car accident. My wife and I are faced with, what do? We want to teach this girl a lesson. Well, what's the lesson we wanted to teach? We had some conversations, and the lesson we wanted to teach was financial literacy. So the first thing we could have done is stuck her with a car payment. Another thing we could have done is make her go get a car loan or make her go get a job. She's interning with us right now. She's getting paid. And she's going to be getting her real estate license and working for us this summer. But what could we do to teach her the lesson of the value of a dollar? You think about that. Most people teach the value of a dollar the way they were taught. Most people like to love the same way they like to be loved. It's hard, and it takes time to think about what message sticks. All right. So here's the post that was made. Back to this real quick. So I came home one night from a conference, and I told my daughter, I said, I'm really struggling with how to think about this new car. Let me tell you how I feel. I don't feel like a 17-year-old should have a nice car. That's how I feel, because that's how I grew up. Do you teach your team, or do you teach your kids lessons because that's how you grew up, or that's how you see life? And so I had to tell my daughter, I said, this is how I feel. You're going to need to give me some time to think. And I believe, this is for anybody right now, I believe we're in a culture right now of quick decisions. I believe we're in a culture of thin slicing, where we make, decisions at a moment's notice. We don't have a lot of time to do the deep work that it takes to think through things. And so there's a difference between reacting based on feelings and reacting based on thinking. And the way I was reacting to her was, I feel like you should not have a nice car. I feel like I don't want to keep buying cars. I feel like, all of the things, right? But then when I got to the thinking level and I started doing some deep work, here's what I came up with, and here's what I put on social media. So we ended up buying her a newer car, low miles. Crossing our fingers, we have to put some money in this one. My buddy Mike helped us out over at Kelly's. And I posted a picture of her with her newer car. And this is the decision we came up with. I said, Mom and Dad will pay for things that go down in value so that you can invest in the things that go up in value. Let me say that again. Mom and Dad will pay for things that go down in value so that you can invest in what goes up in value. I have the ability to make a car payment or pay for a car. So either paying cash or making car payments doesn't matter. I have the ability to do that for my daughter. And if I have the ability to pay for things that go down in value, why would I want my daughter to be spending her money on something that goes down in value when I could teach her about investing? So it was that day I taught her about a Roth IRA, did a little research, called my guy. And from 18 years old, if you max out a Roth IRA until retirement age, Bree's going to have $8.2 million. So why would I want her to learn the lesson about a dollar through car payments? Again, I'm not speaking to the people that maybe couldn't do this for their kids. My parents did the best they could. And they give me so many tools. It's ridiculous. Like, I have so many tools right now. Being financially independent right out of high school or college was not one of them. And that's okay. There's so many other tools that they gave me. It's unbelievable. I'm so grateful for the tools that they've given me as it relates to living a principle-centered life, or believing in relationships, or my faith, or, the value of family. Like, there's so many things that I have received. But when it came to making this decision for my daughter, I had to understand, what is shifting the generational curve. I know my parents were advanced well beyond their parents. And I'm trying to, outperform my parents. And I hope my kids outperform me, just like I know you have for your kids. So I said, Mom and Dad will pay for the things that go down in value so that you can invest in the things that go up in value. The generational difference. How many times have you heard somebody say, I didn't have as nice of blank when I was your age? Almost every first-time buyer I've ever worked with in my life, when their parents show up to the home inspection or the closing or the walkthrough or the showings, every single one of them says, I didn't have this nice of a house when I was your age. Good. That's how it's supposed to be. You see, Lindsay and I agreed to pay for the car as long as Bree was willing to max out her IRA. And if she does that, she'll end up having $8.2 million. Fellas, if you're listening right now, yeah, that's right. My daughter's going to have $8.2 million minimum when she's retiring. And so we just agreed that the lesson was financial literacy, not struggling to make her bills. Man, I've had so much feedback and so many questions like, hey, what are you doing? How are you maxing it out? How much money per month? And it's like, listen, the details don't matter. What matters is she needs to understand the value of a dollar. She's not going to be able to go to Target and spend money whenever she wants if she has to max out her IRA. And in 2024, I believe it's around $7,000. Based on what she's making right now, it's a lot of money. Might be 50% of her income. Might be 50% of her income. But what she's going to learn is she's going to learn that she's going to have to say no when her friends want to go shopping or when she wants to go out to eat. She may have to pack a lunch every once in a while to go to work. That's okay. She's learning the same lessons, but from a different teacher. I'll say that again. My daughter's learning the same lessons. It's just from a different teacher. I've got a couple things that I want to go over, and it's just some notes that I've taken when it comes to shifting the generational curve. We talked about investing in real estate. We talked about getting ahead. We talked about making sure that you can, as a parent, pay for the things that go down in value so your kids can invest. I'm not going to pay for a car and then let her, go buy clothes. Absolutely not. If you're going to buy clothes, if you're going to hang out at Target, you're going to be paying for your own car. Okay, I want to make that really clear right now. But here's a couple things. Like I think a lot of times, parents, grandparents, we think of hardship as a badge of honor, right? I mean, the idea that struggle is necessary to succeed, that's true. I think struggling to max out your IRA at 17 years old is the same, if not better, lesson than trying to make a car payment or renting an apartment. If my kids can buy a house, you build wealth through home ownership, not through renting. It's the same struggle. Time out. Student of the Game is brought to you by Noll Team Real Estate. Our mission is to eradicate mediocre real estate transactions. On your largest financial purchase, you shouldn't have to deal with average. We do this by helping you save time, reduce your stress, and helping you keep as much money in your pocket as we can. You can help us out by introducing us to your friends or family who want to make confident real estate decisions, whether buying, selling, building, or investing. At Noll Team Real Estate, we are connected to a group of realtors who sell 1 in every 8 homes in North America. If you know someone moving out of your area, there's a great chance we can connect them to somebody we know, like, and trust. Remember, relationships win. Now back to the show. I think the leading phrase that you hear a lot of people say is, I had to walk uphill both ways. How many times have you heard somebody say that? I think this creates pressure, undue pressure, unnecessary hardships. Are you kidding me? I am the guy that will say that adversity is one of the best teachers. But my kids don't have to have the same adversity I do. There can be new teachers. My kids work hard in a lot of areas. My kids are better than me in a lot of areas. I'm not going to remove adversity from their life. If I want to shift the generational curve, not lift it, if I want to shift it, I have to advance the adversity my kids are going to go through. I'm going to give them some controlled adversity, but we're going to shift it a little bit so that they can be further ahead. I think the value of material possessions. The older generations sometimes often emphasize that they had to work harder for less. I think that reinforces that, luxury is unearned or undeserved. It's okay to have nice things, right? It's all about the fundamentals. We talk about that in the podcast. Master the fundamentals. What's the fundamentals of money? Go back to the Complete Money Playbook. Brian Lessinger was just on a couple weeks ago. The Complete Money Playbook. If you want to get better with money, go follow people that are good with money. If you want to get better at relationships, go follow people that are better at relationships. You want to be better in your faith, go follow people that are really good at their faith. It's if your marriage, like there's so many topics. I think there's rites of passage too. And I know many cultures have rites of passage that sometimes become expectations, like milestones or education or career paths. Like, oh, everybody in my family gets a master's degree. Okay, well, I got a master's degree from the locker room. I didn't go in hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. I got a master's degree in the locker room. I am a CEO and I run multiple businesses because of what the locker room taught me. But I was paying attention. I was curious. I think there's sometimes, we put rites of passages on people. Work ethic myths, the belief that working long hours equates to dedicated, hard workers, loyal employees. I think it leads to burnout. I think when you neglect your work-life balance, that's not a healthy thing. Financial wisdom, common advice, like financial advice, like save every penny or avoid debt at all costs, sometimes is oversimplistic and not applicable. I remember my parents always said, save for a rainy day. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't understand taxes and I didn't understand payroll and I didn't understand budgeting and marketing just by the phrase, save for a rainy day. And I think sometimes, kids are smart. Kids want to go a little deeper. Like, what does that mean? Tell me what that means. How can I learn? How can I grow from this? Don't just give me a phrase. Don't give me a quote. Like give me the quote, but then back it up with like real life knowledge. Education versus real world experience. I think there's a debate of whether formal education is more valuable than practical experience. I think it creates tension. Should I go to college or not? Like when I was growing up, it's like, hey, it was a badge of honor, go to college. Now it's like, well, there's a lot of trades that are out there that are good. Are we giving our kids, are we giving the next generation advice that advances them, that shifts the curve? Or are we just lifting it? Are we just handing the same challenges to the next generation? I think there's emotional expression. Many older generations were raised the belief that emotion should not be, or that should be suppressed. I think there's some mental health issues that are probably coming from that. It's okay to express yourself. Kids these days, my kids wear different color socks, and they're like, "I'm expressing myself today." I would never do that. I'm not wearing different colored socks. You kidding me? That'd drive myself nuts. But you get it. And I think there's health and wellness myths out there about diets and exercise, regimens and things that just can be outdated, and things change, and that's okay. Fundamentals don't change, but the strategies and tactics do. And remember that. So this is my short episode. I think there's themes in life. I think you can have a rich life. I think you can be blessed. I think you can pick up clues. I think you can pick up clues. Last thing, I was talking to my kids this week about investing in real estate. When I knew I was going to do this podcast about shifting the curve, I wanted to talk to them about investing in real estate. So I went to ChatGPT and said, I've got a 17-year-old, 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. How would you explain investing in real estate to each of them? And it was funny because it talked about, a 17-year-old at this age can grasp more complex concepts about investing in finances. At 14, this age, they start developing a more structured understanding of how things work. So keep things simple but relatable. And at 12, for this age group, you can keep it very simple and focus on the concept of buying a house to earn money. That's one example. In a lifespan of 5 years, five and a half years difference, 6 years difference, that it coaches you on how to talk to those kids differently based on their ages. If you think about just that example, people learn in different ways. People are going to get the same lessons, but from maybe a different teacher. And it's okay. I'm giving you permission right now to say, if you want to shift the generational curve in your family, if you want to shift the generational curve in your business, remember, it's okay to teach your people the same lessons through a different lens or even through a different teacher. This is Student of the Game podcast, where I believe you got to master the fundamentals. You got to fall in love with practice. And ultimately, you're going to win at the game of life. And the way you do that's through relationships. I hope I can build a great relationship with my children, my wife, my family. I hope the work that I do is an honor to the people who came before me, my parents, my grandparents, my siblings, my sister, my brother, my friends, my mentors. And I hope you're looking at the next generation like that. Don't look at it from a scarcity mentality. Don't look at it like it's unacceptable to grow. It's unacceptable to have nice things. It's unacceptable to fail forward. I think there's lessons in all of it. So my hope and prayer for you is you continue to be a student of the game. Thanks for listening. And remember, if you like this episode, screenshot it. Tag me on social media. I'll make some more of them just for you. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to Student of the Game podcast. Whatever game you are playing, I'm cheering for you. See you in the next class.